cycle of temperature changes across the tropical Pacific Ocean. That impacts weather patterns around the world. When the East Pacific is cool, it's La Nina.
It's finally about to happen. The weather monster we have dreaded is here, and its effects are going to be way more than we thought. Weather agencies in all countries across the North American continent have been watching this huge weather monster to find a solution, but unfortunately, there is little to nothing they can do to curb this situation. What weather monster is about to happen in North America, and how much damage will it cause? Join us as we explore why North America's biggest monster is finally about to happen. The year 2020 was a year of extremes, as that was the year we got the warmest September on record. According to the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service, September 2020 replaced September 2019 by 0.05 degrees Celsius, the warmest September of all time. And this temperature was not recorded only in certain regions, as places like the Middle East, off the coast of northern Siberia, Australia, and parts of South America recorded substantially above average temperatures. On the other hand, the eastern equatorial Pacific saw cooler than average temperatures due to a giant force known as La Nina. La Nina is not the only giant force, though. We also have El Niño in the picture. El Niño is often referred to as the warm phase of the ENSO. The ENSO, also known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation, is a recurring climate pattern that involves changes in the temperature of waters in the central and eastern tropical parts of the Pacific Ocean. During periods ranging from about 3 to 7 years, the surface waters across a large swathe of the tropical Pacific Ocean warm or cool by anywhere from 1 degree Celsius to 3 degrees Celsius compared to normal. This oscillating warming and cooling pattern is known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation cycle, and it directly affects rainfall distribution in the tropics. It is also bound to have a major influence on the weather over several regions across the globe, including the United States of America. Whenever El Niño events occur, winds across the equator become weaker. Also, warm water is pushed back east toward the west coast of the Americas. As a result, less cold water rises toward the surface. That influences a major change in the Earth's temperature, and the impact of this temperature change is beyond imagination. The warmer waters cause the Pacific jet stream to move south and extend, causing warmer and drier weather to strike northern parts of Canada and the United States. Surprisingly, southern states would have different weather. And over in the Atlantic Ocean, the El Niño force typically weakens hurricane seasons, while at the same time it powers hurricane activity in the eastern and central Pacific basins. And in other continents like Africa, El Niño causes decreased rainfall in West Africa, Southern Africa, and parts of the Sahara region. But it's a different case for East Africa. A major downpour of rain exists there. The warmer water caused by El Niño also has effects on marine life. That's right, during El Niño, less nutrient-rich water is brought up from the ocean floor, bringing about a smaller amount of phytoplankton, which is usually used to support the wider ecosystem. As a result of this temperature change, fishes are either forced to move to a better and more conducive area or stay in their present habitat to die. An El Niño event is declared when sea temperatures in the tropical eastern Pacific rise at 0.5 degrees Celsius, 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit above the average temperature. Even though they are two different giant forces of nature, it can be easy to relate El Niño and its counterpart La Nina as two sides of the same coin, like yin and yang. That's not the case, however. As opposed to El Niño, it's mostly referred to as the cold phase of the El Niño Southern Oscillation. During La Nina, which translates to the girl, westward winds in the Pacific surrounding the equator become stronger than usual, driving more warm water towards the Asian continent. As it becomes the reason for a drop in temperatures at the surface, colder, nutrient-rich water rises from the ocean depths along the United States west coast. The cold waters in the Pacific push the jet stream northward, which causes drier weather in the southern part of the USA. And it would be colder and wetter weather in other areas like Canada and the Pacific Northwest. In the times of La Nina, there are also warmer winter temperatures in the south and cooler temperatures than normal in the north. La Nina can also cause less terrible hurricane seasons in the Pacific, but would fuel a more severe hurricane season over the Atlantic Ocean. And like its counterpart, La Niña also affects other parts of the world. Its effects make wetter weather in some regions of Southeast Asia and Australia, while in Africa, La Niña gives drier conditions in areas like East Africa. This was a sight to behold, and we experienced it 3 years ago. September 2020 was the warmest September since global record-keeping began in 1880. And it was so evident that NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information (NCEI) had to report the incident. The month was just 0.02 degrees Celsius warmer than the previous record held jointly by September 2015 and 2016. Even the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and the European Copernicus Climate Change Service classified September as the warmest September on record. However, the Japan Meteorological Agency saw the month from a different perspective and named it the third warmest September on their record. Most times there are little differences in rankings among multiple research groups, resulting from different ways they handle data-sparse regions such as the Arctic. The 9 months of January through September were 1.02 degrees Celsius, 1.84 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average. That 9-month period is the second warmest on record, only 0.04 degrees Celsius, 0.07 degrees Fahrenheit behind the record set in 2016. According to the NCEI's Yearly Temperature Outlook, 2020 was virtually certain to rank among the 5 warmest years on record, and it did. And that also made the 7 calendar years from 2014 to 2020 one of the 7 warmest years on record, dating back to 1880. And the La Niña event that caused the warmest September in 2020 was felt worldwide, with regions like northern and central India recording above normal temperatures. Delhi, for example, recorded above normal temperatures on 8 days in September. The mean maximum temperature for the national capital was 36.2 degrees Celsius compared to September 2020's climatological mean of 32.8 degrees Celsius. That was a huge 3.4 degrees Celsius above normal, and it greatly shocked the India Meteorological Department. And the data analyzed by the India Meteorological Department showed that September 2020 was 0.63 degrees Celsius above the average September temperature as per the standard 30-year climatological reference period from 1981 to 2010. It was also 0.08 degrees Celsius warmer than September 2016, which was one recorded as the second warmest September after 2019. And apart from India, Europe also encountered record-high September temperatures. In Europe, the September temperature of 2020 was 0.2 degrees Celsius warmer than the previous highest of September 2018. The entire continent of Europe, especially southeastern Europe, also experienced related warm temperatures. And in the United States, the September temperature of 2020 was at 1.1 degrees above the usual, making it the third warmest September in 126 years. This weather event caused by La Niña lasted until 2022, when it became the 21st century's first triple La Niña event. After La Niña thrived from September 2020 all the way into 2022, the World Meteorological Organization (WMO) and meteorologists were perplexed about its long existence, so they conducted further research. Their results showed a high chance that a triple-dip La Niña was expected to occur through the remainder of 2022 and possibly into early 2023, and boy did it happen. The National Weather Service reported a 91% chance of La Niña conditions in the months of September through November, decreasing to 54% from January through March this year. That was how 2020's La Niña became the 21st century's first triple La Niña event after 3 straight years, but thankfully it finally ceased in February 2023. According to the NCEP's final El Niño Southern Oscillation Alert, a statement issued on March 9th said, during February 2023, below-average sea surface temperatures prevailed and they weakened. Currently, they persist only in the central Pacific Ocean. The latest Niño 3.4 index value is minus 0.2 degrees Celsius and the Niño 1+2 index value at positive 1.1 degrees Celsius. Collectively, the coupled atmosphere system was consistent with ENSO neutral. Scientifically, when the Niño 3.4 index value falls below minus 0.5 degrees Celsius, it is considered an ENSO neutral. The Oceanic Niño Index (ONI) is a value that helps meteorologists to declare either of these three events. This index of a region identified as Niño 3.4 Central Equatorial Pacific is the main indicator for declaring La Niña, El Niño Southern Oscillation, ENSO, and El Niño, the three oceanic events defined by the prevailing sea surface temperatures (SST) along the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Well, that is all behind us as La Niña has ended, but now we might be in a bigger mess as Earth is under an El Niño watch. However, scientists are also observing as they're seeing signs that the climate pattern is developing. El Niño's arrival could have major impacts around the globe, including a push toward levels of global warming that climate scientists have warned would be catastrophic. Since March, a rapid increase in average ocean temperatures has been helping to strengthen theories that El Niño is indeed imminent. But one of these giant forces just ended. It's quite weird to find that its counterpart would come up almost immediately. So how sure are we that we're really about to experience an El Niño event? El Niño is associated with warmer than normal waters in the Pacific Ocean along the equator, especially in eastern Pacific waters close to South America. And according to satellite data that enables scientists to measure water temperatures in the uppermost layers of the ocean, that area has shown dramatic warming in recent months. At the same time, climate scientists also look at wind patterns to detect El Niño. Typically, in the absence of El Niño, Pacific trade winds push warm surface waters to the west toward Asia. During El Niño, those winds weaken. As of early April, National Weather Service forecasters in their latest El Niño forecast analysis described striking warm waters near coastal Peru and Ecuador, but noted that trade wind patterns were relatively normal and do not suggest El Niño is here. However, climate forecasting models have suggested a 62% chance of El Niño by July and a nearly 90% chance of it coming up towards year's end. And yet, despite the fact that people are trying to find out about imminent phenomena, it might be hard to find. This is because whether El Niño is dry, cold, wet, or hot, it depends on where you reside. It all relates to domino effects that result from El Niño's warmer waters and weakened winds in the Pacific. The ocean warmth signifies increased evaporation and a rising motion in the lower atmosphere over the eastern Pacific, creating towering clouds, rain, and storms. That moisture flows to the east and creates above-normal precipitation along the southern tier of the United States. Some of the most severe El Niños have delivered heavy rainfall and mudslides to Southern California, for example. Impacts can vary depending on the strength of an El Niño, however. Larger temperature and wind anomalies mean a stronger El Niño. On the other side of the Pacific, though, it has the opposite effect. Drought often plagues Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and northern Australia during El Niño. That can lead to wildfires like those that burned across Indonesia in 2015. The rising motion over the Pacific triggers changes in air circulation patterns that have far more widespread effects around the world, too. El Niño is known for creating tropical cyclone development in the Atlantic Ocean and can lead to quieter than average hurricane seasons. That's because the regions where Atlantic hurricanes are created and strengthened tend to have more high pressures from a sinking motion in the atmosphere. During El Niño, those areas tend to see increased wind shear, a change in wind direction and speed at different altitudes, making it hard for tropical storms to organize and strengthen. Usually, El Niño lasts 9 months to a year, centered around the northern hemisphere's winter months when the pattern is known to be the strongest and most influential. It often peaks in December and January. La Niña, on the other hand, can last for a year or more, and we know that the most recent La Niña thrived for 3 years, nearly uninterrupted. In the United States, La Niña is known for drier and milder winters across much of the southern and eastern parts of the country, and wet, cold, and snowy winters in the Pacific Northwest and Great Lakes region. La Niña also encourages active Atlantic hurricane seasons. Now, although these giant forces have a giant effect on our world, their names are one weird phenomenon if we examine the situation. Well, the explanation ties back to the warm eastern Pacific waters. As far as historians can say, fishermen off the western coast of South America would notice that in some years currents would change and waters would warm, driving their catch away. They most often notice the problem in December, when we now know the El Niño pattern often reaches its peak intensity. El Niño refers to that time of year close to Christmas. It translates to the Christ child. Still, it is not a supernatural phenomenon because El Niño has long been part of natural climate oscillations. But more recently, likely due to the influence of climate change, the effects of El Niño have become more extreme and less predictable. David Costalago, a marine scientist with the advocacy group Oceana, said in an email, "Scientists believe extreme El Niño and La Niña patterns may regularly develop as greenhouse gas emissions cause the planet to keep warming. Research also postulates that trends could cause El Niño's own warming influence to be more dramatic and pronounced. If, by chance, greenhouse gas emissions keep rising dramatically, extreme El Niños could occur once a decade instead of about once every other decade. That could bring about more storms, heat waves, wildfires, and droughts. But what would that mean for global warming? El Niño has long been known to boost global temperatures. Against the backdrop of greenhouse gas-driven planetary warming, there are speculated concerns that El Niño's influence could push Earth toward destabilizing climate change thresholds. The warm Pacific waters and increased evaporation imply that the ocean loses heat trapped in the atmosphere. Furthermore, the increased cloud cover from that evaporation means more of the sun's heat is absorbed into the atmosphere rather than the oceans. Scientists estimate that trend could contribute a couple of tenths of a degree Celsius of warming to average global temperatures. Robert Rode of Berkeley Earth estimates that 2023 will be Earth's second, third, or fourth warmest year on record. And yet still, as of mid-April, the planet also had a 38% chance of setting a new record annual average temperature. If El Niño develops, it is likely to moderately boost global average temperatures during the rest of 2023 and into 2024, Robert Rode wrote. And such a ramp-up toward record global heat has been observed during previous transitions from La Niña to El Niño. After a lengthy period of La Niña in which the oceans absorbed large amounts of heat, a strong El Niño developed in 2015 and 2016 and contributed to the hottest average global temperatures ever observed in 2016. "We're likely going to see the same sequence play out," said Michael McFadden, a senior scientist at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. "We're going to see this big ramp-up in global mean surface temperatures again." So what do you think about the upcoming El Niño? Is it a danger looming ahead or just another occurrence of nature? Let us know in the comments section below.